They say the truth will set you free. What they don't tell you is that it'll also destroy everyone else's life in the process. My name is Rick Morrison, and I'm about to tell you how a simple apology became the most devastating weapon I've ever wielded. It started on a Tuesday morning when my wife Laura demanded I apologize to her brother-in-law for something I didn't do wrong. Let me paint you a picture of my life before everything went to hell. Imagine a house that screams, "We're doing just fine, thank you very much," manicured lawn, three-car garage, and a mortgage that would make a banker weep tears of joy. That was my world for 15 years. I'm Rick Morrison, 41 years old, and I make a decent living as an IT security consultant. Not exciting enough to write home about, but stable enough to keep Laura in her yoga pants and organic smoothies. My wife Laura, 39, works as a corporate PR director, which basically means she's professionally trained to make lies sound like gospel truth. A skill that would prove more relevant than I initially realized. We have two kids who actually make this whole suburban charade worthwhile. Jamie, 13, is a gaming prodigy who can hack into his school's system but can't remember to put his dishes in the dishwasher. Chloe, 10, has the sharp tongue of a courtroom lawyer and the intuition of a bloodhound. Both kids are closer to me than their mother, which should have been my first red flag. Hudeta humda. The morning everything started unraveling. I was in my home office debugging a client's network security when Laura burst in without knocking. She had that look, the one that said I was about to be blamed for something that wasn't my fault. "Rick, we need to talk," she announced, crossing her arms in that way that made her look like a disappointed school principal. "Good morning to you too, honey," I replied without looking up from my screen. "Coffee's fresh if you want some." "This is serious. Marcus is upset about what you said at dinner last night." Marcus Lane, Laura's sister's husband, and quite possibly the most entitled piece of work I'd ever had the misfortune of knowing. Marcus was one of those guys who thought being a corporate lawyer made him God's gift to humanity. He drove a BMW, wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and had the personality of a parking meter. "What exactly did I say that hurt his delicate feelings?" I asked, finally turning to face her. "You embarrassed him in front of everyone when you questioned his story about that client case. He was just trying to share something interesting from work." I remembered the moment clearly. Marcus had been bragging about how he'd destroyed some small business owner in court, practically gloating about the man's financial ruin. When I suggested that maybe bankrupting a family business wasn't something to celebrate, Marcus had gotten defensive. "Laura, I simply pointed out that real people got hurt in his legal victory. If that embarrassed him, maybe he should examine why." "That's not the point, Rick. He's family, and you made him look bad." Rebecca was mortified. Rebecca Lane, Marcus's wife, was actually a decent person trapped in marriage to a narcissist. She was quiet, observant, and had this way of looking at her husband like she was constantly disappointed, but too polite to say anything. "So what exactly are you asking me to do?" "I want you to call him and apologize. Make this right." I stared at my wife, waiting for the punchline that never came. "You're serious, dead serious. Marcus is important to this family, and I won't have you ruining relationships because you can't control your mouth." There it was, the real Laura. Not the charming PR professional who could sell ice to Eskimos, but the controlling woman who cared more about appearances than principles. I'd been seeing glimpses of this version more frequently over the past year. "Fine," I said, turning back to my computer. "I'll handle it." "Good. I already told Rebecca you'd call today." After she left, I sat there thinking about how we'd gotten to this point. When had my wife started treating me like an embarrassing relative she had to manage? When had she started caring more about Marcus's feelings than mine? The answer, I was about to discover, was more complicated than I could have imagined. That afternoon, while Laura was at her yoga class, I decided to do some research. Not because I planned to apologize, hell no, but because something about this whole situation felt off. Laura's sudden concern for Marcus's feelings, her insistence that I make things right, the way she'd been taking his side more and more lately. I'm an IT security guy. I know how to find information, and I know how to spot patterns. What I found in our phone records, credit card statements, and Laura's suddenly secretive behavior painted a picture I really didn't want to see. Hotel charges on days when Laura claimed to be at work conferences. Text messages at all hours to a number I recognized as Marcus's personal cell. New lingerie purchases that definitely weren't for my benefit. Trust me, I would have remembered. The final piece fell into place when I found a receipt in Laura's purse for dinner at Romano's, an expensive Italian place downtown. The date was last Tuesday, when she'd told me she was working late. The receipt was for 2 people. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and something cold and calculating settled in my chest. Laura wanted me to apologize to Marcus? Oh, I was going to give her exactly what she asked for. But first, I needed to make some calls. Neil Rodriguez had been my friend since college, back when we were both young and stupid enough to think we'd change the world. After graduation, he'd become a cop, spent 15 years on the force, and now ran his own private security company. He was the kind of guy who could find Jimmy Hoffa if you gave him a weekend and a decent cup of coffee. Rick, my man, Neil's voice boomed through my phone. Please tell me you're calling because you want to hire me to catch Laura cheating. I've been waiting for this call for 2 years. Jesus, Neil, was I the only one who didn't see this coming? Brother, Helen Keller could have seen this coming. That woman's been checking out of your marriage since Obama was in office. So, you want me to get you some evidence? Actually, I think I've got plenty. What I need is advice on how to use it. I spent the next hour laying out everything I'd discovered. Neil listened without interrupting, occasionally making those little sounds that cops make when they're taking mental notes. So let me get this straight, he said finally. Your wife is banging her sister's husband, and she wants you to apologize to him for hurting his feelings? That's about the size of it. Rick, this is beautiful. This is like Christmas morning wrapped up in karma and tied with a bow made of pure justice. Please tell me you're not going to waste this opportunity. Oh, I'm not wasting anything, but I need to be smart about it. I've got 2 kids to think about. Fair enough. What's your plan? I told him what I had in mind. Neil was quiet for a long moment, then started laughing, the kind of deep, belly laugh that made me grin despite everything. Rick, you magnificent bastard. That's not just revenge, that's art. When do we do this? Tomorrow night. Laura's already arranged for me to go over to Marcus and Rebecca's house to make my apology. Perfect. You want backup? Just be ready with a camera. I have a feeling this is going to be worth documenting. After I hung up with Neil, I spent the rest of the evening organizing my evidence. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, even some photos I'd managed to pull from Laura's cloud account. Pictures of her and Marcus at restaurants, looking very much like a couple on a date. The kids were in their rooms doing homework, and Laura was downstairs watching some reality show about housewives behaving badly. The irony wasn't lost on me. I thought about confronting her directly, having it out in private like civilized adults. But then I remembered all the times she'd dismissed my concerns, all the nights she'd come home late with flimsy excuses, all the ways she'd made me feel like I was being paranoid and unreasonable. No, Laura had made her choice. Now she was going to live with the consequences. The next evening, I dressed carefully for my apology. Khakis, button-down shirt, the kind of outfit that said harmless suburban dad. I even brought a bottle of wine, a nice Cabernet that cost more than I usually spent, but this was a special occasion. I'm proud of you for doing this, Laura said as I grabbed my keys. It takes a big man to admit when he's wrong. I'm definitely going to admit some things tonight, I replied. This should be very educational for everyone involved. Laura smiled and kissed my cheek, completely missing the edge in my voice. For someone in the PR business, she was remarkably bad at reading people when it mattered. The drive to Marcus and Rebecca's house took 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. I kept rehearsing what I was going to say, making sure I had all my facts straight. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice. Rebecca deserved to know what kind of man she was married to, and Marcus deserved to face the consequences of his actions. Their house was a monument to Marcus's ego, oversized, over-decorated, and completely lacking in warmth. I rang the doorbell and waited, my heart pounding with anticipation. Rebecca answered the door, and I could see immediately that she'd been crying. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she had that fragile look of someone who'd been holding themselves together by sheer willpower. Hi, Rick, she said quietly. Marcus is in the living room. Thank you for coming. Rebecca, before we go in there, I need to ask you something. Has Marcus been acting strange lately? Different? She looked at me sharply, and I could see the intelligence behind her tired eyes. Why would you ask that? Because I think you already know the answer, and I think you deserve better than wondering if you're going crazy. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then Rebecca's face crumpled, and I knew she'd been suspecting the truth for a while. What do you know, Rick? Everything, I said gently, and I'm here to make sure you know it too. Marcus was sprawled on his leather couch like a king holding court, a glass of expensive scotch in his hand, and that smug expression he always wore when he thought he'd won something. He looked up when Rebecca and I entered the room, and his smile widened. "Rick, good of you to come. Rebecca, honey, could you give us some privacy? This is between men." "Actually, Marcus, I think Rebecca should stay," I said, settling into the chair across from him. "What I have to say concerns her too." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes, a brief flash of uncertainty. But his arrogance quickly reasserted itself. "Look, Rick, I appreciate you coming to apologize, but there's no need to involve Rebecca in our business." "Oh, but there is." I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. "You see, Marcus, I did come here to apologize. I came to apologize to Rebecca for not telling her sooner what a piece of garbage she married." The color drained from Marcus's face. Rebecca moved closer, her eyes fixed on my phone screen. "What are you talking about, Rick?" she asked, but her voice suggested she already knew. I handed her my phone, showing her the first photo, Marcus and Laura at Romano's, his hand on her thigh, both of them looking very cozy. "I'm talking about your husband's affair with my wife. I'm talking about hotel receipts and secret phone calls and all the lies they've been telling us." Rebecca stared at the photo, her hands shaking. Marcus jumped to his feet, his face flushed with anger and panic. "You son of a bitch! How dare you come into my house and what, Marcus? Tell the truth? Show your wife evidence of what you've been doing behind her back?" I stood up, meeting his glare with a calm smile. "Sit down before you embarrass yourself further." "Rebecca, don't listen to him," Marcus said, his voice taking on that wheedling tone men use when they're caught red-handed. "This is obviously some kind of setup. He's trying to destroy our marriage because he's jealous of what we have." Rebecca scrolled through the photos, her face getting paler with each image. There were dozens of them. Marcus and Laura at restaurants, walking hand in hand through downtown, even one of them kissing in the parking garage of Laura's office building. "How long?" she whispered. "Based on the evidence, at least 8 months, I said gently. "Probably longer." "Rebecca, you can't believe this." Marcus was practically shouting now. "This could all be faked, photoshopped." I pulled out a manila folder and set it on the coffee table. "Hotel receipts, Marcus. Credit card statements. Phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts between you and Laura, many of them after midnight. Your wife isn't stupid. She knows this is real." Rebecca set down my phone and opened the folder. As she read through the documents, her breathing became shallow and rapid. Marcus made a move toward the folder, but I stepped between them. "Don't," I said quietly. "You've done enough damage." "This is insane," Marcus said, but his voice had lost its conviction. "Rick, we can work this out. We're family." "No, Marcus, we're not. We never were. You're just the arrogant prick who married into Laura's family and thought that gave you the right to treat everyone else like servants." Rebecca looked up from the papers, tears streaming down her face. "The business trips, the late nights, the way you've been so distant and critical." She laughed bitterly. "I thought it was me. I thought I was losing my mind." "Rebecca, honey, please, don't you dare call me honey." She stood up, the folder clutched in her hands. "Don't you dare try to manipulate me now. How many times did I ask you if something was wrong? How many times did you make me feel like I was being paranoid and needy?" Marcus looked around desperately, like he was searching for an escape route. "This doesn't have to ruin everything. We can go to counseling. We can work through this." "With my sister-in-law?" Rebecca's voice was ice cold. "You want us to work through the fact that you've been screwing my sister-in-law for almost a year?" I almost felt sorry for Marcus. Almost. But then I remembered all the times he'd condescended to me, all the ways he'd made me feel small and insignificant, all the nights Laura had come home late, lying to my face about where she'd been. "There's more," I said, pulling out my phone again. Voice messages Laura saved, text messages. Some of them are quite explicit about their plans for the future. Rebecca held up a hand. "I don't need to hear the details. I've seen enough." She walked to the front window and stood there for a long moment, looking out at the perfectly manicured neighborhood. When she turned back to us, her face was composed, but her eyes were hard as diamonds. "Marcus, I want you out of this house tonight." "Rebecca, be reasonable." "Tonight, Marcus. Take whatever you can carry and get out. My lawyer will be in touch about the rest." "Your lawyer?" Marcus's voice cracked. "You can't be serious. Deadly serious. And Marcus, I'm keeping the evidence Rick brought me. All of it. I'm sure my attorney will find it very useful in the divorce proceedings." Marcus turned to me, his face twisted with rage. "You bastard. You've destroyed everything." "No, Marcus. You destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone knew about it." He lunged at me then, but I was ready for it. 15 years of marriage to Laura had taught me to anticipate emotional outbursts. I sidestepped easily, and Marcus stumbled into the coffee table, scattering papers everywhere. Pathetic, I said. Even your tantrum is weak. Rebecca was already on her phone, presumably calling her lawyer, or maybe her sister. Marcus scrambled to his feet, his expensive suit rumpled, and his hair messed up. This isn't over, Rick. Oh, but it is. You're done, Marcus. Your marriage is over. Your reputation is shot. And when word gets out about this, and it will get out, your precious career is going to take a hit too. Laura's not exactly known for keeping secrets. I gathered up my evidence and headed for the door. Rebecca caught my arm as I passed. Thank you, she said quietly. I know this couldn't have been easy. You deserve to know the truth. No one should have to live with that kind of uncertainty. As I walked to my car, I could hear Marcus shouting behind me, probably making more threats and promises he couldn't keep. I didn't look back. Phase 1 of my plan was complete, but the night was far from over. I still had to go home and face Laura. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, which meant Laura had already gone to bed. Perfect. I wanted some time to prepare for what was coming next. I sat in my kitchen with a beer, thinking about how the evening had played out. Rebecca's reaction had been everything I'd hoped for. She was hurt, but she was also angry, and angry people take action. Marcus was probably in some hotel room right now, frantically calling Laura to figure out their next move. My phone buzzed with a text message. Laura, how did it go? Is Marcus happy now? I typed back. Oh, he's definitely feeling something. We'll talk when you get home tomorrow. I'm home now, upstairs. Come tell me about it. I looked up at the ceiling, imagining Laura up there in our bed, probably wearing one of those new nightgowns she'd bought for Marcus. The thought should have made me angry, but instead I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Actually, I think I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Long day tomorrow. There was a pause, then. Is everything okay? Everything's perfect, honey. Sweet dreams. I turned off my phone and finished my beer. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. I woke up to the sound of Laura's phone ringing downstairs. It was 6:30 a.m., and she was in the kitchen making coffee like it was any other morning. I could hear her voice through the floor, urgent, panicked whispers that told me Marcus had filled her in on the previous night's events. When I came downstairs, she was off the phone and standing by the window, still in her robe. She turned when she heard my footsteps, and I could see the fear in her eyes. We need to talk, she said. I figured we might. Coffee smells good. I poured myself a cup and sat at the kitchen table like we were about to discuss weekend plans. Laura remained standing, her arms crossed defensively. Marcus told me what you did last night. Did he? What exactly did he tell you? He said you ambushed him with fake evidence, trying to break up his marriage. I laughed, actually laughed out loud. Fake evidence. Laura, I showed Rebecca photos of you and Marcus together, hotel receipts with your credit card number on them, phone records from our account. What part of that was fake? She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. I could see her PR training kicking in, trying to find the right spin for an impossible situation. Rick, I can explain. Can you explain 8 months of lies? Can you explain all those late nights when you were supposedly working? Can you explain why you bought lingerie and wore it for another man? Tears started rolling down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, just a cold satisfaction that the truth was finally out in the open. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she whispered. How is it supposed to happen, Laura? Were you planning to leave me for him? Or were you just going to keep lying indefinitely? Marcus and I, we were going to figure it out. We were going to tell you and Rebecca when the time was right. When the time was right? When would that have been exactly? After you'd drained our savings account? After you'd destroyed our kids' sense of family? When, Laura? She collapsed into the chair across from me, sobbing now. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It started as just, I don't know, excitement. Something different. Marcus made me feel alive again. And I made you feel what? Dead? Bored? Trapped? You made me feel invisible, she said, looking up at me with red, swollen eyes. We've been going through the motions for years, Rick. When was the last time you really looked at me? When was the last time we talked about anything besides the kids, or the mortgage, or what to have for dinner? She wasn't wrong, and that was the hell of it. We had been going through the motions, but instead of talking to me about it, instead of trying to work on our marriage, she decided to blow it up. So this is my fault? That's not what I'm saying. It sounds exactly like what you're saying. I wasn't paying enough attention to you, so you decided to screw your sister's husband. Don't be crude. Crude? Laura, you've been lying to me for months. You've been risking our children's stability, our financial security, our entire life together, and you're worried about me being crude? The kitchen fell silent, except for the sound of Laura's crying. Upstairs, I could hear the kids getting ready for school, their normal morning routine continuing while their parents' marriage imploded downstairs. What happens now? Laura asked finally. Now? Now you get to live with the consequences of your choices. Rebecca's filing for divorce, and she's got all the evidence she needs to take Marcus to the cleaners. Your affair is going to come out in court proceedings. Our friends are going to find out. Your family is going to find out. The kids are going to find out. Rick, please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I stood up, towering over her. There is no we anymore, Laura. You made sure of that when you decided Marcus was more important than our marriage. So that's it? 15 years, and you're just throwing it all away? I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that. She looked up at me with desperate eyes. What about the kids? What about them? They're going to learn that actions have consequences. They're going to learn that lying and betrayal destroy families. Maybe that's a lesson they need to learn. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. Something you might want to try sometime. I left her crying in the kitchen and went upstairs to get ready for work. Jamie was in his room, headphones on, lost in some online game. Chloe was in the bathroom, brushing her teeth with the kind of concentration that suggested she'd heard more of the downstairs conversation than I would have liked. Dad? She said when she saw me in the hallway. Yeah, sweetheart, are you and Mom getting divorced? Kids. They always cut right to the heart of things. I don't know yet, Chloe. We're having some problems that we need to work out. Is it because Mom's been lying about where she goes at night? I stopped dead in my tracks. What do you mean? I heard her on the phone sometimes, talking to Uncle Marcus. She sounded different, happy in a way that made me feel weird. My 10-year-old daughter had figured out what I'd been blind to for months. I knelt down so we were at eye level. Chloe, I need you to know that whatever happens between your mom and me, it's not your fault or Jamie's fault. Adults sometimes make bad choices, and other adults have to deal with the consequences. Are you going to make bad choices too? I'm going to try not to. But I'm also not going to let anyone lie to me anymore. She nodded solemnly, like she understood more than any 10-year-old should have to. I hugged her tight, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, and trying to memorize the moment before everything changed forever. Downstairs, Laura was still crying. I could hear her on the phone, probably with Marcus, trying to figure out how to contain the damage. But it was too late for damage control. The truth was out, and it was going to spread like wildfire through our social circle. I grabbed my laptop bag and headed for the door. I had work to do, and not just the kind that paid the bills. It was time for phase 2 of my plan. Neil was waiting for me at the coffee shop downtown, a shit-eating grin on his face, and a manila envelope on the table in front of him. Please tell me you got it all, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. Brother, I got stuff that would make a documentary filmmaker weep with joy. He patted the envelope. Marcus leaving the house with a suitcase at midnight, looking like a whipped dog. Rebecca throwing what looked like his golf clubs onto the front lawn. And the piece de resistance, your wife showing up at 12:30 a.m. for what appeared to be a very heated conversation with her boyfriend. Laura went to Marcus's house last night. Oh yeah, and let me tell you, it did not go well. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but there was a lot of pointing and gesturing. At one point I thought she was going to slap him. I opened the envelope and looked through the photos. They were perfect, clear, well-lit shots that told the whole story without needing explanation. Neil, you beautiful bastard. This is exactly what I needed. What's the next move? Now we let the gossip mill do its work. I'm thinking we start with Linda Patterson. Linda Patterson was the unofficial mayor of our neighborhood gossip network. She knew everyone, talked to everyone, and had a talent for spreading information faster than the internet. If I could get these photos to Linda, the whole subdivision would know about Laura and Marcus by dinner time. That's diabolical, Neil said admiringly. I love it. We spent the next hour planning the distribution strategy. A few photos anonymously mailed to key gossips in the neighborhood. Copies sent to Rebecca's lawyer. A set delivered to Marcus's law firm with a note suggesting they might want to review their ethics policies. What about Laura's job? Neil asked. What about it? She works in PR, right? Her company probably has some kind of morality clause in their contracts. Adultery scandals don't exactly scream trustworthy spokesperson. I hadn't thought of that angle, but Neil was right. Laura's firm represented several family-oriented businesses and religious organizations. They wouldn't be thrilled to learn that one of their directors was having an affair. You think I should send the photos to her boss? I think you should let someone else send them. Keep your hands clean. Maybe Rebecca's lawyer could make some inquiries about Marcus's professional conduct. These things have a way of spreading once they're out there. One is no issue. By the time I got home that evening, the phone was already ringing. Laura was in the kitchen, looking haggard and defeated, while Jamie and Chloe ate dinner in uncomfortable silence. "Don't answer it," Laura said when I reached for the phone. "Why not?" "Because it's probably someone who's heard rumors. The whole neighborhood is talking." "Talking about what?" She gave me a look that could have melted steel. "You know exactly what they're talking about." I answered the phone. It was our neighbor, Mrs. Chen, calling to express her concern about the difficulties we were going through. She'd heard from Linda Patterson, who'd heard from someone else, that there might be some marital troubles in our household. "Thank you for your concern, Mrs. Chen," I said pleasantly. "Laura and I are working through some issues, but we appreciate your thoughts." After I hung up, Laura exploded. "How could you do this to me? How could you humiliate me in front of the entire neighborhood?" "I didn't do anything to you, Laura. I simply made sure people knew the truth. You sent photos to people, private photos. Photos of you and Marcus in public places, doing things married people shouldn't be doing with other people's spouses. If you didn't want people to see them, you shouldn't have posed for them." Jamie looked up from his plate. "What photos?" "Nothing you need to worry about," Laura said quickly. "Actually," I said, sitting down at the table, "I think you both deserve to know what's going on." "Rick, don't. Mom's been having an affair with Uncle Marcus. I found out about it and told Aunt Rebecca. Now they're getting divorced, and everyone's talking about it." The silence that followed was deafening. Jamie stared at his mother like he'd never seen her before. Chloe nodded like this confirmed something she'd already suspected. "Is that true, Mom?" Jamie asked quietly. Laura's face crumpled. "It's complicated, honey." "It's not complicated," Chloe said matter-of-factly. "It's cheating. We learned about it in health class. When married people have boyfriends or girlfriends, it's called cheating, and it's wrong." Out of the mouths of babes, Laura fled the kitchen in tears. Jamie pushed his food around his plate without eating. Chloe continued eating like nothing had happened. "Are you okay with this?" I asked her. "I'm not surprised," she said. "Mom's been different for a long time. She stopped caring about family movie night. She stopped helping with my homework. She was always on her phone or going somewhere else." "What about you, Jamie?" My 13-year-old son looked older than his years when he answered. "I'm mad at her, but I'm also kind of relieved that you finally know. It was weird, watching you pretend everything was normal when it obviously wasn't." That night, after the kids went to bed, Laura and I had our final conversation as a married couple. "I'm filing for divorce," I told her. "Rick, please, we can fix this." "No, we can't. Even if I could forgive the affair, I can't forgive the lies. I can't forgive the way you made me feel crazy for suspecting something was wrong. I can't forgive the way you put our children's security at risk for your own selfish desires. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. You should have thought about that before you decided Marcus was more important than your family." She cried, she pleaded, she promised to change. But I was done. The man who had spent 15 years trying to make Laura happy, trying to be the husband she wanted, was gone. In his place was someone harder, colder, and completely immune to her tears. The next morning, I called a lawyer. 3 weeks later, the divorce proceedings were in full swing, and the fallout was everything I'd hoped for and more. Rebecca had taken Marcus to the cleaners, getting the house, half his retirement savings, and a hefty alimony payment. Marcus was living in a studio apartment downtown and facing an ethics investigation at his law firm. Laura had been asked to take a leave of absence from her job while the company reviewed her situation. Apparently, several clients had expressed concerns about being represented by someone involved in such a public scandal. But I wasn't done yet. The final piece of my revenge was set to unfold at the annual neighborhood barbecue, an event Laura had helped organize for the past 5 years and had been looking forward to attending, despite everything that had happened. "You can't seriously be planning to go to that," Neil said when I told him my plan. "Oh, I'm absolutely going, and so is Laura, if I know her. She's too proud to let the neighbors think she's ashamed of what she did." "And Marcus? Marcus will be there too. He's got too much ego to stay away." Neil shook his head. "This is either going to be brilliant or it's going to be a complete disaster. Why can't it be both?" The barbecue was held in the community park, with families from our subdivision and the surrounding neighborhoods. It was the kind of wholesome, all-American event that made our suburb feel like something out of a 1950s sitcom. I arrived with the kids, who were excited to see their friends and completely oblivious to the undercurrents of adult drama swirling around them. Laura showed up 20 minutes later, dressed to kill, and wearing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The whispers started immediately. I watched our neighbors trying to act normal while stealing glances at Laura and whispering behind their hands. It was like watching a nature documentary about pack animals rejecting a member who'd violated the social order. Marcus arrived fashionably late, probably hoping to make some kind of grand entrance. Instead, he got the cold shoulder from every married man at the party and looks of disgust from their wives. He gravitated toward the bar and stayed there. I was manning the grill, flipping burgers and making small talk, when Linda Patterson approached with that gleeful expression she wore when she had particularly juicy gossip to share. "Rick, I just wanted to say how sorry I am about everything you're going through. You're handling this whole situation with such dignity." "Thank you, Linda. I'm just trying to focus on what's best for the kids." "Of course, and I hope you know that everyone supports you. What Laura did was just, well, it's unforgivable. And with her own sister's husband. I mean, the betrayal." Other neighbors began gathering around, drawn by the promise of drama. I could see Laura watching from across the park, her face pale as she realized what was happening. "I appreciate everyone's support," I said loudly enough for the growing crowd to hear. "It's been difficult, but I'm grateful that the truth came out when it did." "Can you imagine if this had gone on for years?" "How did you find out?" asked Bob Martinez from 2 streets over. "Hotel receipts, mostly. Laura was using our joint credit card to pay for her romantic getaways. She wasn't even trying to hide it toward